how to use your menstrual cycle to get the most out of your sex life. Now, Jolinda Johnson is a women's health coach who helps women live in sync with their cycles, master their stresses, and feel empowered by their body so they can feel safe in their own skin. So welcome, Jolinda. It's so great to have you here for this chat today.
Thank you for having me, Nat. Really happy to be here.
Well, so you do some amazing and very interesting work. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more what that actually really means, or what the work that you do really entails.
Well, I typically work with clients over 4 to 6 months, and really the goal is to help them balance their hormones, master their stress, and live in sync with their menstrual cycle. Because for me, it's all about a journey home. A journey home to the woman that you have always wanted to be, that really you already are, but you need to return to that. And understanding the way that your body works and embracing that cyclical nature is a huge part of that. Which is why I think that any holistic health coach working with women needs to have a very good understanding of the menstrual cycle, because it just determines so much of our lives. And as you'll see as we continue this talk, our sex lives included. And so it really makes a difference when you start living according to that rhythm and that flow, so that things just suddenly come with greater ease. You understand yourself more, you're more compassionate, automatically more compassionate, because you don't expect to be the same all month long. You understand why there are certain times that you don't have as much of an appetite, and other times when you want to eat the whole fridge, or when sex sounds really yummy, and other times when you need extra foreplay, or times when you really just want to be on your own and centered as a taskmaster, and times when you are open and social. And once you kind of understand the rhythms of your cycle and know what to expect, life becomes a lot easier, and you become a lot more understanding towards yourself as well. So and I think in that in itself, aside from all the other things I work on specifically to reduce stress, that in itself reduces stress in a woman's life.
Yeah.
Because when we're constantly working against that, it's just an uphill battle.
Yeah, I can completely resonate with that. And maybe you can tell us a little bit more what a typical menstrual cycle actually looks like. I think many women, or most of us, aren't really aware. We obviously have had it for a long time, but we're not fully aware of maybe what it typically looks like.
So a typical menstrual cycle is 21 to 35 days. And the first day of the menstrual cycle is the first day of your bleed. And if you read a medical textbook, they'll say that it's divided into 2 phases: the follicular phase, which starts on the first day of your cycle and ends with ovulation, and the luteal phase, which goes from ovulation to your next bleed. But you can actually divide it into 4 phases, which I think is a lot more useful, because each of those 4 phases, like the seasons, has its own energy and flavor. So the bleeding phase, which would be your inner winter, that lasts between 3 and 7 days. That's the normal range. And that's the time when we're shedding the endometrium lining and turning inward and preparing for the growth of the new follicle. So by day 6, the follicular phase is called that because it's all about the dominant follicle in our ovary growing and preparing for ovulation. So by day 6, that dominant follicle is releasing estrogen. And so that's why in the spring, that season that starts after our period, we experience greater energy. We're more open to new experiences. We have a boost in our libido that's also helped by testosterone as we near ovulation. And basically, estrogen or estradiol is the star of the show in that first half. Then when that reaches its peak, it releases luteinizing hormone, and that's what causes the egg to be released. Ovulation is the main event, and that's summer. So that's the ovulatory phase. And that's when, we'll get into this later on, but that's when our sex drive is really at its peak, because the whole point is for us to get busy. And so we're naturally, we have more cervical fluid, we have greater blood flow to our genitals, and we most likely experience more sensitivity in our breasts as well, which all can add to positive sexual experience around that time. And then the luteal phase, the fall, progesterone takes over, because once the egg is released, then we form a temporary gland. What once was the follicle becomes a temporary gland called the corpus luteum, that pumps out progesterone. And that's when a lot of women experience a dip in their sex drive, because progesterone is the calming hormone, the grounding hormone, which is so essential for our mental health, but it's not exactly libido's friend. So, we tend to turn inward, become very task focused. We're not really as open as we were in the first half of our cycle to new experiences. And then in a 28-day cycle, around day 26, the corpus luteum disintegrates, stops pumping out progesterone, so we experience a drop. That's where a lot of people are, because not only people who identify as women menstruate, experience those really crunchy days of PMS. And then we go back into winter and start again with day one.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. And I think when we're not aware of that and we're not really in the mood, now we probably know why. Why am I not really in the mood for sex? And it probably also comes down to, maybe you can tell a bit more, what should we be aware of to get the most out of each cycle? Because maybe when we're in winter, just as we are in autumn, how can we still enjoy having sex, but when we are in a different stage, that might not be necessarily summer.
Well, so winter is probably the trickiest season, because when we're talking about sex, not just sexual pleasure, but actually having sex with a partner, some women really enjoy sex during their period because you have that extra lubrication. Shower sex especially can be very enjoyable during that time. But other women really don't want to have that kind of connection. And in that case, if you would rather go solo, masturbation is a perfect thing to do when you're on your period, because orgasms not only will shorten those last days of bleeding when you kind of just want it to be over, because it helps the uterus. It can speed that up, but it also releases prostaglandins, which are that's basically why you experience menstrual pain. So it's a way of flushing out the excess prostaglandins, and it obviously relaxes you as well. So for winter, every relationship is different, but if your partner is not into period sex, then definitely find your own practice during that time. And then in the beginning of the follicular phase, or what I just spring, that's a time when things are going to be really easy, where you'll naturally be in the mood. So if you're looking at your calendar, that's the time to plan a date night. That's the time to come home from work a little earlier, or to expect that you'll want more connection and more intimacy by nature. And it should come if you have a balanced sex drive. And this is something else that's worth mentioning, is that we're designed to have fluctuations in our sex drive, but we're not designed to have no sex drive. So if you are, again, not on birth control, that's something else that's important, because women who are on birth control won't experience these fluctuations. If you're not on birth control and you don't notice any difference in your sex drive, and you're not feeling, any kind of, whether you're in a partnership or not, just no desire, that is a red flag for some other imbalances that can occur. Or, as you know, emotional work that needs to be looked into. And then in the summer, as we approach ovulation, that is when we have a peak in testosterone. So we really, want to go for it. And it's very useful that our cervical mucus, especially depending on our age, we produce less cervical mucus as we age, because in our 20s we can have 3 to 5 days of that really stretchy egg white fluid. But in our mid-30s, it can go down to 1 day. But you should, in any event, have a little extra lubrication. Foreplay won't be as necessary. And that boost in testosterone will make you feel more adventurous as well. So if there are positions that you've been wanting to try, or maybe role play, that's the time to do it, because you won't feel so inhibited. If you are single, however, be very cautious of having sex with male partners specifically around ovulation, because women tend to be attracted to handsome jerks around ovulation as opposed to nice, dependable guys. They found this. I'm not making it up. So just, if you have sex around ovulation with a new guy who, is treating you like a jerk, you're not in love. It's just your hormones.
Check your calendar, see if you're in your cycle.
And then in the fall, so this, a lot of women have no problem having sex in the fall season in their luteal phase, myself included. But it might require a little more effort on your part and your partners to get in the mood. So more foreplay, more physical touch. You might not feel so adventurous. So, like familiar positions that you're both comfortable with, that can sometimes be more appropriate as you approach your period. And to know that because this is a time when we tend to experience those symptoms of PMS and stress and anxiety, especially if we're not producing as much progesterone as we should, which most women, especially over 35, are not producing enough progesterone, and are their ratio of estrogen and progesterone are off, I should say. And so that's even more important to delegate, to communicate to your partner, especially that this would be a good time to help me with this, or if you could do me a favor and take, this chore off my back, for example, that will most likely increase your libido as well. Any time that you can kind of lighten the domestic stuff during that time, you'll most likely be more in the mood in the bedroom.
Yeah, and I think it really, like, learning about this, it just tells you again how important it is for you to know yourself, for you to talk about your body, about your emotions, and then if you're in a relationship, that you can communicate that with your partner, because often we don't even know why we might be feeling a certain way, but we have a better understanding of our cycle, of the way how we feel, and we can communicate that, and then it won't create any sort of tension, and I think you will also stand more in your power. Like, this is exactly what I need. I'm now going to give myself permission to have either the time or space to have these experiences. And really comes down to self-awareness.
Yes.
So knowing this is really, really important, because we then learn to understand our boundaries. We learn to understand what it is that we really need. And, and again, like, we all are so different. So maybe you are slightly different, and that's completely fine too. So for example, I know some women, that's when they're in winter, when they are menstruating, that's when they want to have sex. Like, they're just, give it to me, let's put it all down, if the partner's up for it, just having the best sex. And other women, like for example, what you just said before makes complete sense to me. When I'm menstruating, actually, I don't really want to be having sex. It's just because I want to be with myself. But I do find that I'm extremely horny, so I tend to seek pleasure.
Exactly.
So, but it's just that works for me, because I need to have that winter, that going into myself, basically taking care of myself. I don't want somebody close to me, but still I want to experience pleasure, so I use self-pleasure for that.
Yeah, exactly. And another thing that I didn't mention is that throughout your menstrual cycle, your cervix also changes position. So for the majority, it's quite low. And if you were to try to feel your cervix, it would feel kind of like a nose, the tip of a nose. But as you approach ovulation, it softens and goes up. So you might find that in the beginning of your cycle, there are certain positions that are uncomfortable if you don't enjoy having your cervix bumped. And as you approach ovulation, those same positions that you didn't like a week ago, you are in love with. And some women actually enjoy having their cervix stimulated. So it's really, we are so different, but it's key to know that, like, same with breasts as well. Our breasts change throughout our cycle. They're more sensitive in the first half leading up to ovulation, and then but they tend to be more swollen leading up to our periods, and sometimes sore. So that can also be something that you're like, why did I like that so much 2 weeks ago, and now it's like the worst thing in the world. You're not crazy. It's just that your body is going through these changes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with that, it actually, like, with the work, like, I really encourage women to go and actually explore on their own, like, touch yourself. How does it feel in different types of cycles to be touched? Use your fingers. How does your cervix feel? Does it feel really tender, or is it feeling really pleasurable? When does it feel really great? When does it not feel so great? So then you can really communicate that with your partner, so they can also show up. And men are beautiful. Often we think they don't understand, but they want to be there to give you pleasure. They want to be there to support you. They want to be able to help you. So I think it really starts you having the courage to go, right, I'm just going to go and explore my body and see how it feels to be touched in different times throughout my cycle, and the different phases that we're going through.
And I think that most men, as you mentioned before, like, it starts with self-awareness. We have to be aware of what's going on, but then we can share that with our partner, and it's a win-win for them, because then they'll know, oh, right. It's as simple as saying, I'm at that point in my cycle where I need a bit more cuddling to get in the mood, for example. And what supportive partner is it going to be like, oh, okay, that's the gateway.
Absolutely. We're like, oh, let's, happy to do that, and absolutely.
Or it might not even be the time for sex, but the time for exploration. And I know that you talk about how valuable that is. That just what feels good right now, and how can we create this intimacy through physical touch without penetration. And in the fall, you'll probably be more willing to do that, as opposed to in the summer, where you just everything's revving up. So that could be like really a bit of a painful exercise.
I guess, our bodies are just so amazing. They really speak to us. Like, I think, learning about this again is just telling us how important it is just to listen to our body, because it will tell us when our body is ready to have sex, when it'll be maybe more pleasurable, when we should just rest. And I think it's really important that we learn to listen to that.
Exactly. Yeah, and the body always knows.
Yeah.
If we take time to really tune in and listen, the body knows. Yeah.
Absolutely. So maybe you can tell us a little bit more. What are some of the ways that we can support our hormones and our sex drives along the month?
So diet is really key. Because sugar, I'm not one of those health coaches that says to cut something out entirely, but if you are depending on sugar to get you through the day, your libido is going to suffer. It kills testosterone. And blood sugar balance is key, is like the foundation of hormonal balance. So if you're experiencing these blood sugar fluctuations throughout the day, that's causing your body undue stress. And when your body is pumping out cortisol, it's thinking you are in a situation that doesn't warrant reproduction. So it's an uphill battle. Of course, you can, the mind can go far in this situation in terms of getting in the mood, but why would you want to make things more difficult than they need to be? Alcohol is another one. If we are winding down with wine every day or most days of the week, then chances are it's going to be a lot more difficult to get revved up. One glass of red wine, they say, it can actually be beneficial to libido, but more than that, and it has the opposite effect. Taking care of your liver is also really important, because the liver is the most important internal organ for women's health. And so if your liver isn't functioning properly, then your sex hormones aren't going to be up to par either. So, really simple things like eating more cruciferous vegetables, staying hydrated. Hydration is important for your sex life in so many ways, because from your hormones to your cervical fluid to your brain health, if you're dehydrated and even mildly dehydrated, you're not going to be as in the mood for sex as you would if you were drinking 2 liters of water a day. And exercise as well. Exercise, cardiovascular exercise, to really, increase our endorphins and get that rush of fresh oxygenated blood, but also strength training. The strength training is one of the best ways that we can keep the ratio of estrogen and progesterone in balance as we age. And when we are estrogen dominant, a lot of times our libido suffers as a result. When our estrogen is where it needs to be in proportion to our progesterone, then we feel bubbly and sexy and juicy. But when it goes overboard, we tend to feel crunchy and bloated and, leave me alone. Feeling comfortable in our bodies is also key to sexual desire. And so if you are used to feeling one way, and then as a result of certain hormonal changes, you look in the mirror and you notice, like, what's going on here, because PMS usually is a result of estrogen dominance. So if you are noticing that, all of a sudden your breasts are really painful and swollen, and you're retaining water, and you're just feeling more anxious and heavy, and I don't mean heavy in terms of your weight, but just in your mood, obviously you're not going to feel like jumping into bed and being sexually adventurous. So yeah, paying attention to that balance of estrogen and progesterone is also really important. And this is not sexy, but very key is having your morning poop. Yeah, that's one of the best ways that we can excrete excess estrogen. When you are constipated, and not having at least one bowel movement a day, that's an indication that, well, one, the excess estrogen is just being recirculated, and two, your thyroid is sluggish, and you're probably stressed. And all of those things are, wet blankets for libido.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess, obviously constipated, I think you're not relaxed. And in order for you to be able to have pleasurable sex, it means to surrender, it means to relax, it means to let go.
Yeah.
If you can't let go.
Yeah. Well, that reminds me of something I didn't mention that has nothing to do with diet or exercise or anything like that. But scheduling time for yourself.
Yeah.
Whether you are in a partnership or not, libido and pleasure have a direct relationship. And if we are not creating those spaces for rest and pleasure within our own personal schedules, independent of our partner or children or whoever else we might be responsible for, we are going to feel overstretched. So really paying attention to, what do I need to fill in my cup? For extroverts, it's usually we need to get out and socialize. Introverts, we need to go off on our own for a bit. And that in itself will make sex seem like just a welcome opportunity, instead of something that we feel like we have to do or we should be doing. We'll just naturally welcome it.
Yeah. And I know you also work a lot with stress, and I want to touch on that too, because stress and sex, they're so connected, and not just for women, it affects your hormones, but also how many times have I heard when women say, oh, my husband, he's so stressed at work, he doesn't want to have sex anymore. So it's not just women that, we have stress, it affects our hormones, but men are the same thing. When they're stressed, even though if they might be a very sexual person, but if they're having stress, they just don't want to have sex anymore. So maybe give us some tips that things you could do to help reduce stress that will actually increase your appetite for sex?
Well, I'm glad that you brought that up with men, because I think there's still a bit of a myth around male sexuality that men are always in the mood, and stress kills their libido just like it does ours. There are, I don't know if you've heard of redliners. Those are the people that actually will seek out more sex when they're stressed, but they found that even in those cases, they don't actually enjoy it as much as they would if they were relaxed. So to relieve stress, it really has to be a daily commitment. Sleep, that's one foundation of